What up, Pittsburgh Steel fans? Matty P here with Shannon White for another episode of the Steelers Global Perspective. We are previewing the Steelers versus the Seattle Seahawks, Week 17 in the NFL season. The Steelers are, they got a really good opportunity if they can get things right at 8-7, going up against an NFC opponent who is in a very similar boat in terms of how they're trying to make a last possible push for the NFC playoffs. Shannon, look, we've had an awesome week after Mason Rudolph, led the sleigh all the way with the Steelers victory on Christmas Eve for me. How are you feeling going into this game with all the narratives and everything going
on? I'm much more concerned about this game than I was last game. I was very confident that Mason Rudolph would be able to have a strong game against the Bengals. The Steelers' offense, as they proved in both games, match up very well with the Bengals. Now, both games were different. When Pickett played, it was a lot more over the middle, sustained drives, and a strong rushing attack. Whereas Rudolph was explosive plays, splash plays, because the Bengals adjusted and the Steelers made them pay. This week, I don't like the matchup as much. No. Seattle's going to play a lot of 2 deep, even 3 deep. They have went from giving up a lot of big splash plays early in the season to the last 4 weeks. They're one of the best at not giving up big plays. So I think that they're going to not give Rudolph those deep balls. I think they're going to, Pickett's had one of the best games for a Steeler receiver, the best game since Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
So he's going to be a focal point. And they are going to double him. They're going to not give them those deep passes. So that is concerning. I believe that Rudolph and him, with a good game plan and execution, can control the game on the ground, complete those passes, especially on third downs. And if they can control time of possession and protect the ball, Rudolph could have another strong game. I'm afraid that fans are going to be disappointed because they're going to want to see a similar performance like they had against the Bengals, and I don't think it's going to happen.
And this is the reason why I say it. Even this week when he was peppered with questions about the explosive offense, Mason Rudolph said, I took what the defense gave me. And that is, for me, what is key to this game. So even when you say there about like doubling Pickens, I'm like, if you want to put with, I did see some clouding, I think Witherspoon there may be injuries there, but if you want to put Woolen on George Pickens and send another defensive back on George Pickens, well, that opens someone else up. I'm cool with it. But that's the one thing I think in this game against this Pete Carroll defense with the quality of players they've got. Like, they've got players at every single position in this defense for the Seahawks. I love that Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback because I feel like Mason has the maturity to actually, take advantage of whatever the defense serves up to him. Not, I'm going to push the ball down the field. I'm Mr. Trubisky that I can do whatever I like. And I'm glad it's not Kenny Pickett playing away in Seattle in late December against that defense as well. You want to say that the first round quarterback in the second year, it can do that, but we just know what that development arc is, and we know what the Matt Kamner offense is. I'm kind of glad Pickett's not in that position.
Yeah.
I think it raises some interesting scenarios depending on coming out of this game, going to the final game against the Ravens, but we'll save that till we know the context of what happens in this game. We talked about it in our previous show, and there's been a lot of talk about this week, the whole with the Bengals, the Freiermuth versus the Pickens piece. Do you think we see more from Freiermuth this game? Or do you think that the Seattle Seahawks know that's another person like George Pickens that they absolutely have to shut down?
Well, the one of the big concerns is Seattle has 3 quality cornerbacks.
Yeah.
If Witherspoon gets to play, which it looks like he's going to, and then Woolen, is it Woolen or Wooten?
Woolen,
yeah. And then they've got another top corner. I can't think of his name. But they go 3 deep. Steelers don't go 3 deep at wide receiver. Not quality 3 deep. So I think this is a game that the Steelers are going to have to lean on the tight ends and lean on favorable matchups. Again, more short passing and setting up play action because they're going to have to run the ball well. I think they have an advantage. I think they can run the ball in Seattle.
Really?
With Harris and Warren. But they're going to have to establish that and then build off the running game with the passing game. Because, like I said, Seattle has a very strong secondary. So, yeah, I'm kind of – you shouldn't be able to take everything away. Meaning even if they take Freiermuth away, they need to utilize Hayward. They need to utilize Washington. I would pay money, Matty, to see Washington catch the ball and get a chance to run over Devin Bush. Devin Bush might run off the field to avoid Washington.
I love it. Do you think the key – I've just been thinking all week about this. I kind of feel like the key to this week's – well, I'll tell you what I think the key is more likely to be. I'll tell you what the other key is that I would love to see, which I feel like I'm the only one that talks about it, and I talk about it 2 years in a row now, and I've not seen any of it. But the first thing, I think the more realistic key, I think Deontay could have a real day here with Mason Rudolph.
Yes.
I think with the way that the Seattle defense is set up, and we saw the quality of Mason Rudolph to hit the slant in like when he had a player in coverage. I just think if Deontay can find a way to work himself almost like on a short post almost between Wagner and like Jamal Adams in this secondary, if he can find a way to wedge himself kind of between the second and the third level and get open in that area, I just think it's going to be right for the picking, and that'll depend a little bit on how people like Pickens block. But I don't want too many puns and tongue twisters in that one. But I do think there's a real opportunity there. But the thing that has frustrated me the last 2 seasons, we talk about the power running back, and I know Najee, needs an offensive line, to block really well the run game. But the way that Ben used Najee and Najee's rookie year in the short passing game, I don't understand. We never see that. No. And I thought that would be a go-to thing for Pickett down the stretch last year. I thought it would be a go-to thing for him starting this season. It's just not there. Now, you can't go from doing it as frequently as Najee Harris did it with Ben to not being able to do it anymore. Like that's not there. So it's obviously missing in the offense. But I don't know why the Steelers aren't trying to work that in, because I think that would absolutely wreak havoc. And it's a big thing. I want to know whether I would love to see it this game, because last year we saw it against the Ravens to close out the season. And that's Pickett threw that touchdown. That's how we won that game, right? So I just love to see on the road, you talked about creativity on some of the things they did on defense in our previous show this week. I just love to see Najee Harris worked into the short passing game more, like particularly now that we see these Warren and Harris sets, and then Warren, one of them blocks the other one, and you might see, Warren's so good in the passing game, and I think that's also effective because they try to find ways to get Warren on the field. I think that's come into play. But even then, Warren's not doing the short passing game the way Najee was doing it. And some of the first downs that Najee was just able to get regularly in 2020 were huge. And I'd love to 2021, sorry. I'd love to see that. I just feel like it's an untapped part of this offense.
I totally agree. Harris and Warren are a great tandem because they both have similarities, but they also are very different. As you say, Warren, how many times this year has he called a pass 5 yards short of the first down, and he's been able to drive through, duck under, jump over, whatever, but he gets that first down. He's relentless. He has a nose for the first down or a nose for the end zone if he gets close. He is an incredible blocker, whether it's pass blocking. The block he threw on Jermaine Pratt to spring Austin for that jet sweep touchdown on Saturday was a thing of beauty. I mean, he depleted Pratt. Pratt went flying through the air. Pratt will never live that down. People talk about Jerome Bettis running over Brian Urlacher. To me, what Warren did to Pratt was way worse, because Warren is 5'8", 220 pounds of muscle. And when he hit Pratt, he said that guy, you seen his soul leave his body for a second.
I love that. Deplete just sounds so good. It's like castrated. It's like just
So, but during his rookie year, he led the Steelers, or was up there in receptions with Ben. And they haven't used him as much as you said towards the end of the year last year. They did, especially around the goal line. But I'd like to see Harris have an 8-catch game again.
Oh my gosh!
Why not just let him float out? Warren gets out in the space. He does a lot of wheel routes. Let Harris float through the middle and post him up right in the middle. And because they're trying to use the middle of the field again. And I'm telling you, Harris can catch that ball. And the problem is you can't tackle Harris and stop him from getting that first down one-on-one. He runs over guys. And if you remember last year, do you remember when he stiff-armed Myles Garrett?
Yeah.
Myles Garrett was still talking about that this past offseason because Harris put him – if Harris would have been able to keep going, Garrett would have never lived that down because Harris did. He pushed him down, stiff-armed him. So I agree with you. Like the line didn't block particularly well against the Bengals, but Harris would get in there and keep his legs driving and push for 4 to 6 yards consistently. And one thing I love about this year's offensive line, I got to say this. In the past, they stood around and watched a lot.
That's true.
Now, because all teams are doing it, now the Steelers are doing it. If there's a scrum, they get in there and they push him forward. And last year, they were standing and watching too much. So I feel like that is a positive development this year.
Well, so I pulled it up while you were talking there. So he caught 74 of 94 balls in 21.
Yeah.
He had 94 targets. And we know Ben likes to use a running back. Obviously, I'd love Bell in there. Last year, he was targeted 53 times for 41 receptions. Right. So we're talking catch percentages there of 78.7 in his rookie year, 77.4 in his second year. And this season, he's only been targeted 33 times for 24 receptions. It's still in the 70s, 73%, or just under.
Consistent.
It's consistent, right?
Just not getting targets.
But here's the difference in why I think, and here's why I think could be good down the stretch. In 2021, when he had the 94 targets or the 74 receptions, he created 22 first downs. In 2022, he had 16 first downs. So we saw that really, really, really down the stretch.
Yeah.
This year, and this is from the receiving games, I think. When he's caught balls this season, he's only responsible for 7 first downs. When I think about fluidity in an offense down the stretch in must-win games, man, you got to give this guy the ball.
Oh yeah. But I don't see the numbers you're seeing in front of me, but I would be willing to bet that at least 30 to 40% of Warren's catches are for first downs.
Yeah, well, this is Najee, but yeah, I can pull up.
Warren is a beast, man. When he gets him catches, he gets to that first down marker. I mean, it's he's just it's that intensity and that drive he plays with.
It's so funny. I feel like no one really talks about the first downs. I talk a lot about when I do my stats on this channel, like about first downs. I feel like there's a lot of people that just overlook like the first down plays.
Well, that's your time of possession.
Exactly.
That's what keeps drives alive. Yeah.
Warren has 17 first downs in the receiving game this year. He had 14 last year. He's caught 52 balls from 65 targets. Last year, he had 28 from 33. So he's over 80% catch percentage for his career. Now, these guys both get the ball near the line of scrimmage. But we're talking about two guys on this offense that are key playmakers when they can get the ball in space. And they're both averaging, one's averaging over 70% when he catches the ball career. And the more balls he gets, the more he catches in Najee. And Jaylen Warren's in a similar boat. I'm just like, where's the passing to the running backs? Like, why isn't this a thing?
And they got to lean on it more, definitely.
And it's a thing going into next year, unless you are going to try and really move Najee in the offseason. Next year, I will know that we have a good offensive coordinator, I feel, purely by the fact of how these running backs are used beyond what they're used right now. I just think they're running at like 3/4 pace. I don't think if for want of a better term, I think we're not using them at full pace. It's just.
As I told somebody, I think it was last night on the Pump Your Brakes podcast, there is literally routes where there's two possibilities for the quarterback to throw to. And a lot of times one's on the other side of the field. So if he gets flushed, there's one target. There's countless plays where they do 3 curl routes, whereas there's no chance for yards after the catch because the momentum's bringing it back to the quarterback. It's just such a anemic, subpar scheme that we haven't really seen a real offense in Pittsburgh for a couple of years. When we get a new offensive coordinator, I think we're going to see drastic changes, things that we're not even going to realize that we've been missing. Because I watch other games and I'm like, man, you never see that in Pittsburgh. So, but I think whoever they get as the next offensive coordinator will go a long way to deciding whether Harris, they pick up that option or not.
Yeah, I think I just want to see some effectiveness on offense.
Harris is not a great fit for every scheme.
Oh God!
And scheme makes. We always said styles make fights. If you're boxing or MMA, well, scheme fit matters for players in production, big time. And Harris, I think, has not had the right line in front of him. His rookie year, it was terrible. It was atrocious. It's gotten a little better each year, but he needs the right fit.
So I want to move on to the Steelers' defense versus the Seahawks' offense. There's obviously some explosive players that play in Seattle. Like I feel like, for over a decade, we've just seen these massive explosive plays. And well over a decade, actually, when you go back on it. Do you think this Steelers defense is capable of putting some sort of I've called it the patchwork defense this week on the channel? Do you think this patchwork defense is capable of stopping Kenneth Walker III and stopping Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and Noah Fant and all these guys? Like that's the thing for me. I feel like the Steelers offense, for once, we can have some level of confidence in it, but it's the Steelers defense going against their offense, which is like the best. Oh, and not to forget Jackson Smith and Jigba as well.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about it last night. This is like the biggest concern I have is that the Seahawks offensive line is not really a great line at all. They give up a lot of pressure for Geno Smith and Drew Lock. But when they played the Cowboys were getting to Geno probably in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But if you got to watch that, I watched it back.
I watched parts of it, yeah.
Geno was throwing the ball into a zone to a spot well before his receivers even broke. 8 years into his career, he is very he anticipates so well. And the only reason the Cowboys didn't have 10 sacks that game is because he was getting rid of the ball in under 2 seconds, putting arch on it, and dropping it into the second level to where his guys had a chance. I think I read 7 diving catches by the Seahawks receivers because the ball was already in the air and they had to run under it. I mean, they had to run to it. That scares me greatly because, the Cowboys have corners. We don't. You're trying to go up against Metcalf and Smith and Jigba and Lockett and Fant, and I don't know who's supposed to cover all them guys. You might do a little bit of the zone, try to disguise it and have Smith make mistakes. The problem is, can they cover long enough to let Watt and Highsmith get there? Because I'm afraid that Smith's going to get rid of that ball so quick. So for me, priority number one, stop Frank Walker. If they can run the ball at all effectively, the Steelers are in trouble.
Yeah.
But if they can shut down the running game and make them turn into a predominant passing attack, then I think, as long as that ball's in there, you can have tips. Watt can make a big play or Highsmith. So to me, they have to stop the run first and foremost.
Yeah, and it's funny what you say in that game. I just pulled it up while you were talking. So they lost that game 35-41.
They played good, though.
Do you want to know how much they had time possession in that game? They scored 35 points in 23.5 minutes.
Yeah. It was a lot of big plays. I told you he was dropping it in.
But the thing, they converted on third down, 9 from 14 on third down. Like, to me, that's the stuff the Steelers have got to stop. You can't let these guys hog the football because they will put up points. 100%.
Matty, this season, I would invite anybody to go watch that film. I thought that Geno Smith was the most impressive quarterback I've seen all year in that game. And the fact that he handled that pressure. I can't tell you how many of those throws he threw getting smacked in the mouth.
Well, he was pressured. He was pressured on by definition.
Yeah.
On per drop back on almost a quarter of those plays.
Yeah.
He was hurried 3 times. He had 3 quarterback hits on him. Pressured, considered 10 times. He had what Pro Football Reference calls bad throws. But this is excluding spikes and throwaways, about 18%. So when you talk about like that running back to the football, some of those would be considered a bad throw under this metric system. So, but his first down hit rate was like almost 40%, right? So
yeah, when he had time, he was picking them apart. And then at other times, he just made these throws where he anticipated. And you don't see that anymore. You used to see it with Drew Brees. Drew Brees had great anticipation. Phillip Rivers had great anticipation. We're used to guys like Big Ben. I mean, Ben had a cannon. He'd hold it to the last second, and he'd put it in a window, real small window.
Yeah.
Not all quarterbacks can do that. But guys like Geno Smith, Drew Brees, Rivers, they have to anticipate and throw to a spot and let the receiver go get it. And Geno played a beautiful game against the Cowboys. So I'm concerned wherever Levi Wallace is, I'm always concerned. That's the truth.
Yeah. I don't see him back in Pittsburgh next season.
I hope not.
So to keep this one fairly tight, what are your sort of 3 sort of succinct like keys to victory for the Steelers in this game? And then I'll give you mine.
All right. Well, protect the football. The Steelers are 1-7 in franchise history in Seattle. They do not travel. That's their worst record against anybody. They do not travel to the Northwest good at all. It's like they're jet lag or something. I don't know. They don't wake up. So they got to protect the football because if they get behind, they're in trouble. Secondly, they got to establish the running game because everything and Rudolph's success will play off of that running game.
Yeah.
And third is they got to stop Seattle's running game. They cannot let Walker establish as the game wears on like they did. We remember they let Connor and the Cardinals get going in the second half. They let the Patriots get going in the second half.
Yeah.
They have to shut down Seattle's running game to give them a chance to get creative in the secondary against that talented passing attack of the Seahawks. So that's my 3 keys.
I love it. My third key is, I think, the same as yours on the run game. I worry about some of that, and I worry about some of their sweep game as well. Like, I think, some of the creative ways Jackson Smith and Jigma, if he's fit to play, can go. So I'm gonna go bottom up. I'm gonna agree with you on number 3. I think number 2 for me is like, what is the tight ends? And I mean, I agree with you. It's not just Freeman. How are you using Washington and how are you using Connor Haywood, right? And the reason why I say that is in context for Mason Rudolph I want to see fluidity on the offense and I want to see continued first downs. I want to see sustained drives. If the Steelers can hold the football and keep the football away from Geno Smith and his, myriad of weapons, that to me, it equals victory. Then I would have had that as number 1, except for the fact that this defense in and around the box, and by I say in and around, I also mean the 5 yards on the other side of the box, that has to just be watertight in this game. If that's not watertight, it's all bets are off because we won't have enough time to hold the football. The Seattle will run away. Seattle will find a way to run away with the game. So that's the way I see it. I'm going to give you a bold prediction, and then if you want to give me a bold prediction, you can. My bold prediction is, you talked about Devin Bush earlier. My bold prediction is that Jalen Warren lines up and absolutely sends Devin Bush flying.
I don't know if you bet on the game or on what could happen in the game. In my random observation article that will be out tomorrow, on
and everyone's got to check that out. It's always a must read
at 11 o'clock. I said that I would pay money to see Harris run over Bush and then have Warren block him into oblivion like he did Jermaine Pratt. And then I'd like to see late in the game if the Steelers could put the game away, have Calvin Austin III torch Artie Burns. that would be a perfect closure to 2 disastrous draft picks for the Steelers.
One might say you have a vendetta against those blokes.
No, when it comes to Bush, I really do.
Yeah.
I've always love anybody who wears the black and gold. Yeah. I mean, I root for him. And I've not. I mean, we all have favorite players.
Yeah.
But I've never disliked guys that wore the black and gold. And I think he might be a good guy, but Mike Mitchell.
I don't know. He walks around.
But do you remember Mike Mitchell?
Well. Yeah.
The safety. He drove me crazy because he would make a play 20 yards downfield, and then he would jump up and celebrate.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, it's your fault. You give up the play, and you run the guy down 20 yards downfield, and now you're celebrating. That kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Same.
And we know that some guys have lost their mind, that we loved, and, like Antonio Brown and Bell. But Bush, the longer he stayed in Pittsburgh, his comments, his attitude, his social media allowed us to realize he was not a Steeler. He was never a Steeler-type player. So watching him I mean, how many times did we see Holcomb? I think he had 3 forced fumbles before he got injured, diving in late when somebody else was bringing the guy down, but he'd dive in and push the ball out. It was constant effort till the play's over. And how many times did we see Bush just standing there watching guys do stuff and where he could have tried to – his lack of effort and intensity drove me crazy. And he was a first-round pick that they moved up to get. So I don't have a personal vendetta, but I'll be flat and honest.
Stirring you up.
No, but I mean, I'll be honest. I don't like the dude.
No, me neither. We can talk a lot about that in terms of drafting and team building. We're going to talk. You wait till the off season when Shannon and I get into that stuff. That'll be huge. And we may even get back into some of our great debates, depending on the opinions that some of us might have too. That I love it. So, Shannon, do you have a score prediction before we close out the show?
Well, I give one last night because we always make one on Pump Your Brakes.
Yeah.
I picked the Steelers to lose against the Bengals, and they proved me wrong. And I hope they do it again because I picked 21-17 Seahawks. And I hope that the Steelers can prove me wrong again.
I think it's going to be I'm going to say 27-24. And I'm going to, yeah, it's hard. It is hard to pick them in Seattle. I'm going to do it. What the heck? I'm going to do it. Mason Rudolph leads his team. The defense gets an interception return for a TD. You look out. But that's going to wrap up this extra episode of this week's Steelers Global Perspective. I'm Matty P with Shannon White. As always, go Steelers.